Hi, it's Risa, the creative director of Sing Into Reading, where you can teach your child to read with music and love. And last week, I talked to you about singing to your child every day, not just reading to your child every day, but also singing every day. And today, I wanted to talk about the importance of storytelling, not just reading stories, but telling stories from memory. Stories are how we make sense of the world. And even when there is no story, we will fit something into a story to help us make sense of it. And stories can make us more empathetic and help our emotional intelligence and make us less prejudiced. And stories help us deal with difficulties in real life. In Bruno Bettelheim's The Uses of Enchantment, he talks about how important it is for children to encounter difficult situation in story first, the big bad wolf in a fairy tale, because it prepares us for the scary stuff of real life. And if we learn how to deal with those difficult emotions in stories, it can prepare us to deal with those difficult emotions in real life. So I am a big fan of fairy tales and folk tales in particular. So today I want to encourage you to tell fairy tales and folk tales to your children as often as you can. And these don't have to be the Grimm's fairy tales, the Little Red Riding Hood, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Three Little Pigs. They can be folk tales from your culture, whatever your ancestry is. I'm Jewish and I know a whole number of Jewish fairy tales and Jewish folk tales rather, and I'll tell you one today actually. But I also collect world folk tales. I tell folk tales from Turkey. I tell folk tales from Africa. I tell Inuit folk tales. I tell folk tales from all over the world, and I was fortunate enough to study folk tales and storytelling with Nina Jaffe at Bank Street College, where I got my master's and learned the power of storytelling. Today, I want to give you just a couple of tips to keep in mind when you're telling stories. Make sure they have a beginning, middle, and end. Start with a story starter. It doesn't have to be once upon a time. There are so many story starters. It can be maybe this happened or maybe it did not. It was long, long ago and much is forgot. Or this one I learned from Nina Jaffe, who I mentioned was my thesis advisor at Bank Street College. So she would say, here comes a story. Here it comes. It's coming. It's almost here. It's here. And then she would start telling. It can be any beginning, but start with a story starter and end with a story closing, which again doesn't have to be and they lived happily ever after. And in the middle, try to find some hook, some repetition part that happens over and over and over that your child can grab onto, and so they can become part of the storytelling experience. Just like in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, we have the repetition of this this bowl is too small, this chair is too small, this bed is too small. It helps to have a repetitive part that can bring some familiarity to the story and provide some structure. Okay, so I am going to tell you a story and then I'm going to sing it. I want you to know that this story is an old Yiddish folk tale, and it was passed like most folk tales in the oral tradition. So there have been many different versions of this story born out of it, like most of these old folk tales. A couple of them have been written down. There was a book version written called Something from Nothing, and there was another book version written called Joseph Had a Little Overcoat. The version I will tell is the way I learned it, mostly from my rabbi when I was a little girl. And So enjoy. This is an old Yiddish folk tale. So a long time ago, and yet perhaps it wasn't such a very long time ago, there lived a family, a loving family. And they had a little boy. The father's father was a tailor. He was the finest tailor in the land. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 he sewed a beautiful blanket for this baby, the most beautiful blanket you ever saw. And the family wrapped the baby in this blanket. And the baby loved this blanket. And they held him in this blanket every single day until the boy grew up. And the blanket became worn at the edges where the boy had rubbed it against his face every single day. And so the mother looked at the boy and said, "Jacob, look at your blanket. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn. It's time to throw it out." And Jacob said, "Grandpa can fix it," because Jacob knew that his grandpa was a tailor, the finest tailor in the land. He took the blanket to his grandfather. His grandfather took the fabric and turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 he fashioned it into a beautiful overcoat, the most beautiful overcoat you ever saw. Jacob loved his overcoat, and he wore it every single day until one day he was sitting down and it split. His mother said, "Jacob, look at your overcoat. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn. It's time to throw it out." Well, Jacob said, "Grandpa can fix it." And he took the overcoat to his grandfather, who turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 his grandfather fashioned that overcoat into a jacket, a very fine jacket, the most beautiful jacket you ever saw. Well, Jacob loved his jacket, and he wore it every single day until one day he was reaching across the table and he noticed that the cuff of his jacket was frayed. His mother saw it too and said, "Jacob, look at your jacket. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn. It's time to throw it out." Well, Jacob said, "Grandpa can fix it." He took the jacket to his grandfather, who turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 his grandfather fashioned that jacket into a lovely shirt, the most beautiful shirt you ever saw. And Jacob loved his shirt, and he wore it every single day, till one day he was bending his arm when a hole appeared in his elbow. His mother said, "Jacob, look at your shirt. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn. It's time to throw it out." And Jacob said, "Grandpa can fix it." And he took the shirt to his grandfather, who turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 his grandfather fashioned it into a beautiful vest, the most beautiful vest you ever saw. Jacob loved his vest, and he wore it every single day until one day he was sitting down and he was eating his borscht when all of a sudden the bowl spilled all over his vest, staining it permanently. His mother said, "Jacob, look at your vest, your beautiful vest. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn, and now it's stained. It's time to throw it out." Well, Jacob looked at the vest and said, "Grandpa can fix it." He took the vest to his grandfather, who turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 his grandfather fashioned it into a lovely necktie, the most beautiful tie you ever saw. Jacob loved his tie and he wore it every single day until one day it ripped clean in half. His mother said, "Jacob, look at your tie. It's old, it's worn, it's tattered, it's torn. It's time to throw it out." Jacob looked at the torn tie and said, "Grandpa can fix it." He took the tie to Grandpa, who took the tie and turned it round and round. And with a snip, 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 and a sew, 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 his grandfather fashioned it into a beautiful covered button, which he sewed on his pants to hold his suspenders up. Jacob loved his button, and he used it every single day. Until one day, Jacob was getting dressed, and when he was putting on his suspenders, he went to attach them. And he looked again. His button was gone. His special button from his grandfather's special fabric was gone. He looked all over the house. He looked all over the park. He looked all over the town. But the button was nowhere to be found. His mother took him in her arms, and his father took him in his arms, and they were a loving family. And they said, "Jacob, I'm so sorry, but even your grandfather can't fix this. No one can make something from nothing." But they might not have been right, because that day, Jacob went to school. He sat down at his desk, and he remembered the story of his beautiful blanket. And he took out a nice sharp pencil, and with a scritch, 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 and a scratch, 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 he wrote this story down, and he told it to his children, and they told it to their children, and they told it to their children and friends, and they told it to their children and friends, and they told it to their children and friends, and my rabbi told it to me, and now I am telling it to you, and now the story is yours. Had an old coat and the coat got torn. What'll I do? What'll I do? Had an old coat and the coat got torn. What'll I do? What'll I do? Had an old coat and the coat got torn, so I cut it and I sewed it, and a jacket was born. And I sing every day of my life. Lost the sleeves to the east and the west. What'll I do? What'll I do? Lost the sleeves to the east and the west. What'll I do? What'll I do? Lost the sleeves to the east and the west, so I cut them off clean and I made it a vest. And I sing every day of my life. The vest got stained with cherry pie. What'll I do? What'll I do? The vest got stained with cherry pie. What'll I do? What'll I do? The vest got stained with cherry pie, so I cut it and I sewed it, and I made it a tie. And I sing every day of my life. You know I do. Once that tie was looking neat. What'll I do? What'll I do? Once that tie was looking lean. What'll I do? What'll I do? Once that tie was looking lean, I made it a patch for my old blue jeans. And I sing every day of my life. Once that patch was next to none. What'll I do? What'll I do? Once that patch was next to nothing. What'll I do? What'll I do? Once that patch was next to nothing. What was left? I made it a button. And I sing every day of my life. Once that button was lost and gone, what will I do? What will I do? Once that button was lost and gone, what'll I do? What'll I do? Once that button was lost and gone, with what was left, I made this song. And I sing every day of my life. I really do. I sing every day of my life. I hope you do too. I sing every day of my life. Keep singing. I love you.